So, have you ever actually stopped to think about how we measure a country's success? For the longest time, if you asked an economist how a nation was doing, they'd literally just point to a dollar sign, right? They'd look at how much money the country was making and, well, that was pretty much it. But, I mean, does money alone really dictate our well-being? Think about it. If an economy is totally booming, but its citizens are uneducated and sick, is that country truly successful? Welcome to our Explainer. Today we're going to unpack how the world completely transformed the way it measures human progress. We're moving away from just counting cash to actually valuing human life and the planet we live on. This massive shift? It all started back in 1990 with an idea that sounded absolutely radical to Wall Street at the time. Two economists, Pakistani economist Mahbub ul Haq alongside Indian Nobel laureate Amartya Sen, made this profound declaration that completely flipped traditional economics on its head. They stated, and I quote, "The real wealth of a nation is its people." They basically argued that a nation's development shouldn't be judged by its gross domestic product. Instead, we should look at how it expands people's capabilities, their choices, and their freedoms. It was a massive wake-up call to the global community to start investing in people, not just economies.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look beyond GDP, then check out the HDI snapshot. After that, we'll explore the SDG roadmap, break down the 5 Ps framework, and finally, look at bridging the gap with the PHDI.
All right, part 1, Beyond GDP, Measuring Real Wealth. So why exactly did that traditional metric need to change? Well, think of GDP like a giant cash register. It's absolutely fantastic at telling you exactly how much economic production and national income is happening. But a cash register can't tell you if the people spending that money are healthy or happy or educated. Fun fact, actually, a massive natural disaster usually boosts a country's GDP because of all the money spent on rebuilding, even though the citizens are literally suffering. And that is exactly where the Human Development Index, or HDI, comes in. Think of the HDI as a medical diagnosis or a thermometer for a nation. It shifts the focus entirely over to expanding human capabilities. It's asking, are people actually living fulfilling lives? By exploring this, we see a crucial shift from a purely financial perspective to a deeply human one.
Moving on to part 2, the HDI snapshot, measuring well-being.
Now, how in the world do we break down something as abstract as human well-being? Well, the United Nations Development Programs simplify this massive concept into 3 equally weighted dimensions. Step 1 is a long and healthy life, which is measured by life expectancy at birth. This tells us a lot about a country's healthcare, nutrition, sanitation, the whole shebang. Step 2 is knowledge. This is measured by looking at both the current average years of schooling for adults and the expected years of schooling for kids just entering the system. And Step 3 is a decent standard of living, measured by gross national income per capita. Put them all together, and health, education, and income provide the ultimate snapshot of a thriving population.
But wait, you might be wondering, how do you fairly compare the income of someone living in a really expensive country with someone in a developing nation? That brings us to this number, $1,000. The HDI uses something called purchasing power parity, or PPP. Because let's be real, $1,000 buys a radically different amount of food, housing, and goods in India than it does in Switzerland. PPP adjusts the income based on the actual cost of living in each country. This makes international comparisons of the standard of living much more realistic and fair.
Okay, so once we have the data for health, education, and income, they get combined into a final HDI score that ranges from 0 to 1. But they aren't just averaged together normally. They use a mathematical method called the geometric mean. So the absolute crucial point here is this. A country cannot just be incredibly, obscenely wealthy, but have a terrible healthcare system and still expect to receive a top development score. No way. The geometric mean ensures that you need balanced development across all 3 dimensions to rank highly. Basically, you can't just buy your way to the top if your people are sick and uneducated.
Let's take a look at how this evolved historically. The HDI gave us the snapshot back in 1990. It showed us exactly where countries stood. But, as we know, realizing a diagnosis just isn't enough without a treatment plan. So, the world created the Millennium Development Goals in 2000 to target very specific poverty and health issues. And while they were successful, they definitely had some blind spots, namely climate change and inequality. Because of that, in 2015, all 193 UN member states adopted a much more comprehensive, environmentally conscious global agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs.
Which brings us to part 3, the SDG roadmap, a global agenda.
If the HDI is the diagnosis, the SDGs are the prescription. The HDI is our snapshot. It measures current outcomes and answers the question, how developed are the people right now?
The SDGs, on the other hand, are our roadmap. They provide the actual policies, actions, and targets required by the year 2030, answering the question, what exactly should governments do to improve? So one measures where we are, and the other maps out precisely where we need to go.
Next up, Part 4, the 5 Ps framework, organizing the goals.
Now, the SDGs are massive. With 17 distinct goals and 169 specific targets, it can honestly feel a bit overwhelming. To make all of this manageable, the UN organized them into 5 broad pillars. We start with people. That means ending poverty and hunger and ensuring health and education. Then planet, fiercely protecting our natural resources, biodiversity, and the climate. Next is prosperity, ensuring inclusive economic growth and building sustainable cities. Then comes peace, building just, inclusive societies with really strong institutions. And finally, partnership, fostering the global cooperation needed to actually get all of this done. It's a completely holistic approach. You literally cannot end poverty without simultaneously protecting the natural resources that sustain us all.
The true beauty of this system is how these frameworks interact with each other. Improving HDI inherently requires progress in the SDGs. They are completely mutually reinforcing. Think about it. If a government successfully executes SDG 3, which is good health, and SDG 4, quality education, what happens? Well, their citizens live longer, they go to school longer, and boom, the nation's HDI score directly increases. The roadmap directly improves the snapshot.
And finally, Part 5, Bridging the Gap. The grand synthesis.
Despite all of this amazing progress, there was still a glaring limitation in how we measured success. I mean, what good is achieving high human development if the planet is literally dying in the process? For decades, countries could score highly on the HDI while simultaneously destroying the environment through excessive carbon emissions and massive resource consumption. They looked great on paper, but they were acting completely unsustainably. To fix this, the UN introduced the Planetary Pressures Adjusted HDI, or PHDI. This right here is the grand synthesis. It takes a country's HDI score and adjusts it downward if their carbon dioxide emissions and material footprint are just too high. So suddenly, being a wealthy, developed nation isn't enough anymore. If your success comes at the expense of the Earth's ecological limits, your score drops. It perfectly merges the human snapshot of the HDI with the intense environmental urgency of the SDGs.
Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative question. If progress costs us the planet, are we truly developing? We've evolved so much, from just counting GDP to measuring human capabilities with the HDI, to guiding global action with the SDGs, and now holding ourselves environmentally accountable with the PHDI. True wealth isn't just about money, and it's not even just about human health and education anymore. It is about achieving all of that while preserving the only home we have. Keep that in mind the next time you hear a headline about global progress. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparks your curiosity to keep exploring how we measure the success of our world.